Hello and good evening, and welcome to the Real Estate Plate. As always, I am your host, Nick Sakalis, coming to you live from the WGBB studios on this incredibly magnificent November 9th night. It is by far a continuation of what you shouldn't expect actually happens for 2020 because everything that shouldn't be happening is happening. We were in the mid 70s today, and I got a feeling that wasn't by accident. I think that was maybe because it was Trevor's birthday today, and there was a sign from above somewhere that basically said, "Let's give this guy a good day." You know, it's been an incredibly insane year.
It is. It was really actually. But I appreciate it, Nick.
Uh,
Coming from you, I consider it
happy birthday.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And to everybody in the Facebook world, everybody in the YouTube world that's listening to me through the live streams, and everybody through the WGBB airwaves, please comment, wish Trevor a very happy birthday because the real estate plate would not be able to exist today if it wasn't for Trevor. He's the guy that does all the magic behind the boards. But all joking aside, seriously, did you expect to have mid 70s today?
No, I was not expecting that.
That's
It's a blessing. Listen, I had a good time today. My daughter took me out and, those gifts and then took me breakfast. Hey, I'm good. I'm good,
hey, things could be worse.
I know. Tell me about it.
I'm about to jump into the worst, but things could definitely be worse.
It's all right.
So I'm, I'm trying to be as optimistic and as like cheerful as possible, and look at the bright side of everything with today's wonderful weather. I got my health. I don't have coronavirus. What else can I ask for? My family's great. My children are wonderful. I have a beautiful wife, a lovely wife that, again, none of them have coronavirus. What else can I ask for? There's one thing I could ask for: less chaos going around, because we got a lot of that, and this is getting crazy right now. And I know this is not a political show, and it has to do really all about real estate. But how could I not talk about what's going on today? It'd be negligent on my end, and it would be definitely not necessarily doing my duty as a person on the radio waves of not at least addressing what's going on. And it does affect the real estate world. So don't get me wrong. Anything that I'm going to be talking about today is definitely related to the show. I'm just going to be very clear with everybody. I'm not particularly in a filtered type of mood today, where I'm really going to be a little more diplomatic and really mince words. I'm going to say things the way I see them and the way things are. And I hope nobody takes any offense to it. But if you do, that's really your problem, because I just say things the way I see them. First thing I'm going to say is that I'm not an attorney. I don't have any kind of legal background. I'm a person, a human being, just like a lot of other people out there that are really trying to go through this whole process. I got an extensive real estate background, and that's where my expertise falls. So I'm going to get into a couple things. Last week when we got off, it was the pre-election show, and I basically signed off stating that we'll probably be talking about the winner if we actually have a winner by then. And it's still not clear. Do we or do we not have a president? From one side, they've declared themselves that they've been a winner. That's the Biden-Harris side. And from the other side, Trump refuses to concede. Now, there's a lot of allegations and there's a lot of issues going on right now in regard to how legitimate or how fraudulent some of the voting practices were taking place. And again, I'm not the one to say that if it was done correctly or not. That's well beyond the scope of my expertise of whether I know if the election standards and voting practices were done legally or illegally. The one thing I do know is that we don't know for sure who our president is, and it's not going to be clear for days or if not weeks to come. And that's putting us in a very, very difficult position. Extremely difficult position. I'm getting calls on a daily level from clients of mine telling me what are they going to do? Are they going to liquidate? Are they going to um, stand back and wait for everything to pan out for their real estate portfolios? I have people telling me that they want to sell off everything and move to Florida, move to Texas, and this is very real. I'm not even exaggerating. I'm not even making this like overblown. This is a very real thing that's happening. The escape from New York mentality has continued and continues to continue going into the ongoing months. We got New York City issues that we've got dived into in past shows, and I'm sure we're going to continue talking about them. We got major landlord tenant issues going on right now. And before I get into that, just let me take a quick pause and let me do what the thing that people do live streams do and ask everybody if you're listening to the show, press like, write a comment, and share this video because that's what people do in the world of the internet. So it'll show me that you're supporting the show. It will help grow the show, help grow the audience. It'll get us in the algorithm, and it actually put a smile on my face if I see a lot of likes on the posts. However, if you don't like it, don't be shy of putting dislike. And if you have a comment that you don't agree with something I say, that's okay too. This is America. We have the right to agree to disagree. So if there's something that I do say that you disagree with, or if you catch me saying something that's inaccurate, please call me out on it. I am a human being, like I just mentioned, and I don't necessarily always have 100% accuracy. Things happen. We make mistakes. It's human flaw. But I'm right most of the time, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna harp on that. So the number here, in case you want to call in, I'm not sure if I'm going to take any calls today, but if you do want to call in, the number here is 516-623-1240. Again, the number is 1-516-623-1240. So if you want to call in, we'll take a call. Maybe a minute. It depends on how much of a rant I get on. It depending on how animate I get on what I'm speaking about. So let me just reverse back to where I cut myself off with that quick like promo and get into what's going on with landlords and tenants. That's exploding and it's becoming almost nuclear at this point. The eviction moratorium is still in full effect. You have a lot of landlords that are in a very, very desperate situation. Their finances have been drained. They are getting loans. They have been tapping into every single resource they possibly can in order to keep themselves afloat. And there doesn't seem to be any type of help down the line. There's promises, And the words, a lot of words, we're getting a lot of words coming around in lip service, but we're not necessarily getting any action. Not any action that is in a pro type of sentiment for landlords. We're getting a lot of stuff that's in pro the other side, on tenant side, and that's okay because there's a lot of tenants out there that need a lot of help, and they should be helped. But we're forgetting about the landlords. And I've been getting so many questions, so many messages, so many videos. I started a new series last week called "The Landlord's Side of the Story," and just through that new series of videos that we've been putting out to YouTube, we've been getting a tremendous outpouring of landlords, people that sympathize, people that understand the situation. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all the kind words you're putting out there. And again, I'm going to state this. I've said this in the past. I'm not making these videos so I could be the figurehead on some type of landlord type of movement. That's not my intention, and I don't want that. There's a lot better speakers out there, a lot better orators that would be able to convey that message other than myself. I'm just a guy with a microphone in front of my face and a camera that's just saying their opinion. So I'm doing my part. I hope that many of the other landlords out there do their part as far as trying to spread the word and trying to help the situation and create some type of understanding to the public that everybody that's being affected is human and they are dealing with a lot of situations that are big burdens on them. So I'm going to jump into a couple of questions that were very key questions that were asked to me over this past week. And I've answered to as many people as I could, but I also want to put this on the video and I also want to get to anybody that might not have heard my answers as of yet. One of the biggest questions I've been getting asked by numerous, I'm talking about a great amount of landlords, is should we stop paying our real estate taxes? And my answer at this moment, my personal opinion, and again, I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm not the guy that knows all the answers. But at this moment, I don't think that's a good idea. And I'll tell you why I don't think that's a good idea. If you have the ability to be able to pay your taxes and you decide to stop paying your taxes, you're just asking for trouble from the city and state. I guarantee you, you're asking for a load of trouble. And the reason I say that is if you're only a handful of landlords that are doing this, the state and the city will eat you up and swallow you up and spit you out and just rip you up financially. It's just the way it's going to happen because only a handful of small landlords don't have the strength to be able to get some kind of change and get some kind of result done. It's just the way it is. Now, if a large group of landlords, a big group of landlords got together and decided all to immediately flip the switch and stop paying, that might get people's attention. But I don't even know how you could get a group of that size organized in a way where they could stop paying their taxes. So to answer that question, and it's been asked to me numerous times in different ways, but pretty much the gist of it is: should we pay our taxes or not? My answer right now: you don't want to take on that battle and go into war right now with the state and the city all by yourselves. If it went in a group effort, a unified effort through many majority of landlords doing this all simultaneously, different story. But if you're going to go out and try to be the cowboy or cowgirl and try to be the person that plants your feet in the ground and say, I'm going to be the person that's going to be defiant, You're going to be the sacrificial lamb. It's happened in the past for other causes and occasions. I hate to see it happen to anybody else. Again, if you're going to be doing something of that nature, it's got to be organized, and you have to have strength in numbers. Otherwise, you're not going to get any traction. You're not going to win up by yourself against the government. You need to have backing, and you need to have a lot of people get involved. Sad but true. Regardless how right you are and how much you're doing it in a justified manner. Sorry, it's just the way it is. The other thing that I've been getting from a lot of people, and I kind of jumped and hinted on that before, is what do we do now? Do we sell off all our real estate now that we still have 1031 exchanges? Now that we still have capital gains tax at a lower rate? Now that the corporate taxes are still lower? Hard to say. And anybody that's going to give you a definitive, quick answer on that is really being negligent, and they're not doing the right thing by you. Everybody's got a very different scenario and situation individually. Everybody's portfolio is comprised in a different way. There's no blanket answer on anything. But what I will say is, if the proclamation is accurate and the Biden-Harris ticket does end up being the new presidential regime, then it's pretty inevitable that taxes will go up. That's been pretty much been clear to everybody. So my suggestion is sit down with your CPA, go over a strategy with them, have a strong conversation with your portfolio, with your finances, and see what measures need to be taken before you take any drastic matters of starting to liquidate everything. I'd hate to see people just liquidate their portfolios on fear and on panic. Same thing happens in the stock market. You know, every time there's fear and panic, people start selling off like crazy. And what happens? The market tanks. You get the people that have been sitting there like vultures hovering over everything, and they come and they just absorb and take over the stocks, and they start profiting when the market starts to turn around. Same thing will happen in real estate if that's the case. If you got panic selling in that kind of situation and it's not thought through, and we don't know what exactly the final resolution and final standing of where our tax brackets are going to be and how real estate is going to be affected by it, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. You know, there's so many things happening right now. This market is insane. It is an insane situation. This is how insane it is. My phone just won't stop ringing off the hook and texting, and I can't even turn it off because if I turn it off, people think I'm ignoring them. It's just another day. My phone doesn't stop all day with questions of panic, of fear, and it's not something that I look forward to every day. Like talking people down and trying to get them to get off the cliff, the edge of the cliff, is not something that I enjoy doing. Trying to be that calming voice, because I'm not a calming voice. That's the thing. I'm not the kind of guy that is going to be soothing people, but that's the role I've been taking right now. You know, I'm more of a blunt, more direct approach kind of a person where I'm going to just say things the way they are, and you know, you can take it as you want. But in this case, there's just so much chaos going on and so much volatility and so much panic that you can't help yourself but by trying to be the reasonable voice, the calming voice. It's tough right now. The market in the suburbs in Long Island, Suffolk, and Queens, it's still hot. People are still buying nonstop. There's not enough inventory out there. Therefore, the prices just keep escalating higher and higher. And the demand just keeps getting more compounded. And that's not going to change anytime soon. Unless you have something super dramatic happen that's going to basically really, really like impact the market in a way where it's going to stop it, which I can't see happening at this moment, you're going to see that trend continuing. You really are. It's a little crazy, but it's the way it is. Like I mentioned in the past, you asked me in March when we were about to go into lockdown and quarantine if this market was going to be the way it is at this moment. Not a chance. You could go and replay some of the old videos that we had of the show where I was talking about this, or some of my old blogs where I talk about. I knew, and I did say this, and I did make a point of letting people know that we were going to see a demand surplus, and we were going to see a supply decrease. That was going to happen because I could see at that time people were already pulling their houses off the market. I just didn't know how rapid that demand was going to be. And I also didn't know that there were going to be a lot of sellers that decided not to put their houses back on the market. Because there's still a lot of people sitting on the sidelines that had intentions of selling, had their houses on the market, pulled it off, and never put it back on, and they're not quite sure if they will be putting them back on. So it's unclear of how long this will continue. But the thing is, I said this last week and the week before. In order for us to catch up, we're going to have to get, for every one home that sells on the market, there's going to have to be 2.5 to 3 times the amount come back on as new inventory in order to bring ourselves to a perfect balance and bring us in a healthy environment. Because right now it is definitely a seller's market. We're in a hot seller's market. The closest thing that I remember being close to this, not even on the same levels, somewhat close to where we're at, is in the mid 2000s. And we all know what happened at the end of the 2000s, 2008 going to 2009. It wasn't really good. Now, I'm not saying we're going to have the same kind of reaction or it came the same result. But what I'm saying is, last study that I saw from Realtor.com said that there was 15% increase this past year overall. Historically, we got 3% increases going on real estate. So if you got a 4 or 5% year, that's a great year. 15%. What does that mean? That means we're going up fast. And anytime you go and get on that fast moving train, you might have a crash. I don't think it's going to be quite as detrimental, as proportionate as it was in 2009, 2010, 2011, because there were other factors that were in play. But we will see things happening somewhere down the line. And again, I'm going to say this again. We're not going to see the effects here this year. We're going to continue seeing this growth happening until the end of the year. And we're going to continue seeing this growth happening for the first quarter of next year. and possibly the second quarter of the year. And the first signs of slowdown will probably be coming into the third to fourth quarter of 2021. So we're not going to really see the full effects of any kind of stoppage or any kind of slowdown in real estate sales in the suburbs, in the outer boroughs, in the outskirts of any major metropolis until really 2022. Now, that being said, you go into the city, into the major metropolis areas, Manhattan, and this applies to many other states that have major cities, they're hurting. They are hurting right now. They can't sell nearly, not even close to the levels they were selling in previous years or at the beginning of the year. We were coming to a little bit of slowdown before this pandemic hit us. Let's not mince words. It's not like we were on a roaring market right before our pandemic hit us. But this just put the brakes on and paused and built a wall right in front of everything. And you have a lot of people that do want to get out of the city. They just can't sell their places at a number that is feasible because they have too much debt on the places, and therefore they remain there. But I promise you, if they had the opportunity to sell at a number that was reflective to what the numbers were last year, they'd be gone. You have that sector of the market. You have the retail and apartment building sector that's basically reeling right now. We're at a situation right now where commercial real estate is being hammered. In the city, it is being hammered. We're talking about vacancy rates unlike anything we've ever seen before. And not only that, we have so many occupied spaces of tenants, both retailers, office buildings, and apartment buildings that are not paying any rents that will be evicted as soon as the moratorium is over. And what happens then? You're going to have a ton more space that's open. You're going to have businesses that are, as soon as the moratorium is over, are going to lock up shop, say, thank you very much, landlord, for the past few months of 3 months. We can't continue this way. We lost too much money. And they're going to walk away. And now landlords could go after them for judgments. They could do whatever they want to do. But it's going to be a nightmare all across the board. It really is going to be a nightmare all across the board. So, am I being dramatic about it? No. No, I'm being realistic about it because I know the numbers. I see what's happening. I'm out there on a daily basis talking to retailers, talking to landlords, talking to tenants, talking to people renting office spaces, people renting warehouses, etc., etc. Everybody's struggling all across the board. Are there some businesses that are thriving right now? Absolutely. Just like in any kind of situation, when you have a crisis, you have businesses that thrive and businesses that fail. But on this level, I don't think we've seen anything. Now, I wasn't around in 1929 when we had the Great Depression. Trevor, were you around in 1929 with the Great Depression?
No.
No? So nobody in this room has been around in 1929 with the Great Depression, so I don't know what the feel on the street was at that point. I don't have anybody around me to explain to me how bad it was. All I could base myself was how bad it was during the financial crisis that we had in 2008 going into 2009, with 9/11, when There was again a escape from New York mentality that was happening, and people want to get out of the major congested areas, but that was for a whole different reason altogether. And a little bit I felt in the mid '90s, late '90s, as far as uh, real estate being somewhat in downward spiral until it started taking off again, and then it got knocked down again in 2001, and then it started rebuilding. So it was a weird time period during that time. I was young in the '80s when people were paying 16 to 18% interest rates. I didn't personally experience that, but I know that my parents experienced that. I know many people that experienced that. And those days, those weren't easy days, but I don't think there was anything like this. This is a different dynamic altogether. People are angry. People are angry with each other. People don't like the fact that they've been locked up for months upon months, that they haven't been able to operate their businesses the way they need to in order to survive. I don't know. I really don't know how this is going to pan out, but it is going to be a wild ride all the way through. I guarantee you that. It's not going to be something that's going to be a quick and simple solution. So, regardless if it's Trump that continues, regardless that if it's Biden that continues, I guarantee you they're going to make some things that are going to help the economy. They're going to help us individually, and they're going to make moves that are going to hurt us individually. The question is, who's going to hurt us more? And it all depends on where your position is in the workforce and the type of industry you're working in, because that's how it usually works. Some industries benefit, some industries get clobbered. Where's the real estate part of the equation fit? Not sure yet. Not sure yet. But the one thing I do know is if they get too harsh on the real estate world, whether it's investors, whether it's individual property owners, whether it's landlords, it's going to have a very severe effect. And I hope that whichever side ends up taking the office, they will think it through very well before they take action. Because the one thing I've said many times over and over again, real estate is a fundamental part of the economy. There is a ripple effect to every other sector of the finance world, to the daily operations world, to the quality of life for individuals, every aspect you could possibly think of. There's a ripple effect when real estate gets affected. So I truly hope that whoever takes office, whether it's President Trump right now, whether it's former Vice President Biden, whoever it is, does the right thing. Because if they don't, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a major problem. You know, that's part of the reason why I don't like old presidents, because they're going to make their decisions, and by the time, a lot of times, you're laughing because you know what I'm about to say. They make the decisions, they stand by them, and realistically, by the time you really get the real effects of what their decisions are, they're either out the door, both physically and spiritually, whether they're out of the door of the presidency or they're out of the door in life because they're so old. I don't want to see anybody pass away or anything like that. But when you have a 76, 77-year-old president, and by the time they get out of office, they're in their 80s, the clock is ticking. Don't mean to be, cold about it, but that's how it is. It's just how it is. It's a very delicate situation, and there's so many things that are going to play effect on real estate going forward. It is so hard to predict anything because if anything has been proven true in 2020, there's no predictability. Nothing. It's been a wild, wild situation. If anybody knows any kind of wild situation, is the man that's right behind me doing Streetwise, Lou Telano. He's seen a lot of things, a lot of craziness that happens. And Lou, I don't know if he hears me. Maybe he'll want to get in there. Maybe he won't get in at the end of the show. I told him if he wanted to hop in at the end of the show to actually step in. But if he doesn't, stick around after the show's over so you can hear Streetwise, because it's going to be, I guarantee you his show is not going to be as delicate as my show is. He doesn't have a way of mincing words, a lot less than I do. Am I being, there he goes.
Did you invite me on? Is that it? Oh.
Yeah.
I hope that people can watch me setting up. I'll put my stuff in if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't mind.
Pleasure with you. I'll just come back in a moment if you guys are still listening.
For everybody that's watching on YouTube and that's
beautiful.
watching on Facebook,
they'll see me getting dressed.
they'll see Mr. Telano getting dressed. He always likes to be dressed to impress whenever he's on camera. And we'll have him with us in a moment. I don't know if I need to give Lou a proper introduction, but Lou is one of the people that has had an enormous amount of experience in New York City, has held many positions throughout the police force, law enforcement, has worked closely with Rudy Giuliani. And again, I'm not putting Lou because he's siding with one way or the other. I just feel that Lou always has something very valuable to provide every time he's on the show.
Come on. Happy birthday, Trevor.
Thank you, sir.
Am I on the air?
You are.
Oh, okay.
You're on the air.
Oh, I got myself now. Nick, I want to thank you for inviting me as a guest. It's an honor,
Well, I'd like to hear a little bit from everybody else, other than just my personal point of view. It's always good to see what a person from another sector, another industry, another point of observation.
Oh, okay.
Feels about how everything is going. I mean, you've been very animated, and you've talked about a lot of the stuff that has been going on right now, especially in New York City.
Well, yeah, and I do, and that's why I'm being punished by Twitter. They froze me.
Oh, they froze you?
Yeah, I'm frozen. Yeah, and every week I'll get Joe Blow and 20 others follow you, and I get a minus instead of a plus. So I probably lost about 10,000. Their figures, the way they do their edition.
Wow.
So, because of what you just said, I'm extremely critical. My organization, New York Veteran Police Association, and my first vice president, Richard Weinstein, who's listening to you, Nick, by the way, he's on now listening to us. First organization to endorse Donald Trump. So, we create a lot of enemies,
So you pissed off a lot of people, basically.
Happy about it.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
Happy about it.
Yeah. This is my policy always in life. I always stand by this. If you're going to take a position, take that position and own it. That's always been my mentality. This is the way I believe.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the people outside, unless I'm completely wrong. I'm big enough to understand if I'm not correct in a factual way, and somebody corrects me, I'm big enough of a man to be able to accept that and learn and grow with it and say, I made a mistake. But when I know I'm right and I truly feel a conviction towards what I'm saying, I own it and I just run with it. And what you went through as far as with Twitter and social media, I've gone through it to some extent as well. I've lost a lot of fans, and
Really?
yeah, well, a lot. Well, I've been on a major campaign, and as far as a major push for landlord rights,
Oh.
and there's a lot more tenants out there than there are landlords.
Well, you know, I was involved in that because I was the chief of the sheriff's department. And I was involved in, so I had to make a lot of decisions in regard to landlord tenant, you know.
Well, I wish you were involved with it now because I'd get your ear and to be able to.
So I was involved in a lot of stuff, and I saw a lot of tremendous political stuff going on there, and people calling up and you know they were asking to do things that I gotta be careful, inappropriate. Let me put it that way. And that was a political controversy. So I know if the landlord has the hook or connection, you know, with somebody, you get a favor. If a tenant belongs to a major tenant group, right, association, they get things done. But you know, Nick, first of all, I'm going to say this. You're like a throwback for your age. I got to tell you.
I am.
Yeah, you got one of the old-fashioned, which some think they're great, by the way. You know, this generation, you know, the 21st century generation, even though you're a little older than that, but you're still in that, you like from my school to a degree, because when you say you own it, it's yours. They're not gonna cop out and like they do today. You watch the politics. Oh, it's not my fault. His fault.
Yeah, people love to flip flops.
Yeah, and they flip. Exactly, they flip.
Well, I'm in I'm in that demographic where I'm considered a Generation X individual.
Yeah.
So I'm not a millennial. I'm not a baby boomer.
Yes.
I'm basically one of those people that are a bridge between the millennials and the.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand the psychology from both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do because
Yeah.
you have two groups that are very polarized as far as where their mindsets are. Where the group, myself being a Generation Xer, is the ones that are trying to be the middle of the road kind of group and be able to understand both sides. And it makes it very difficult. But with the whole landlord tenant situation, it's gotten out of hand. And you're right. There have been a lot of favors that have been done in the past for the landlord groups, and there have been a lot of things that have been done for the tenants associations in the past.
Right.
But the thing is, it's gotten so extremely lopsided right now as far as how difficult it's become to be able to say what's justified and what's not.
Yeah.
And it's really become a major burden, especially on the small landlords, the ones that they can't afford to keep the expenses going on places.
They're getting murdered, right?
Well, they're getting killed right now. You have the eviction moratorium that's in place, and you have a scenario where you have a lot of landlords that can't. Some of them lost their jobs, so they're unemployed.
Absolutely, yeah.
They had a 2-family or 3-family house that they live in themselves, and they were depending on that extra income coming in from those apartments. Now the state turned around and said, "You don't have to pay, regardless if you have COVID or not. You don't have to. You can't get evicted until January." I mean, we're talking about 9 months now.
Yeah.
Since March. We're talking about, and you have some cases that were pending from before that are still held back. So you have people that have not collected rent for a year and a half, 2 years in some cases, and because of the system the way it is, and the tenants are saying you can live there no problem. They're telling the landlords, you have to keep paying for all the utilities.
Correct.
You have to keep paying the insurance. You have to keep paying your mortgage. Some of them got mortgage forbearance, but that doesn't really mean anything if you still eventually have to pay it back. Yeah. And at the same time, you have to pay your property taxes. So how is it fair when you're turning around and telling somebody you pay, but they don't have to pay? And at the end of the day, that person that has that two-family house or that three-family house has to be out on the street, and they lost their house. How is the government in a position to say you can live in a house, but you're going to get kicked out? Because that's basically what they're doing. They're picking sides. Why they're picking sides? There's more tenants out there and more votes out there.
Let me ask you this: why are the landlords always seem to be the bad guy?
You tell me.
Why is that? I mean, you're like
you tell me. Yeah. They've always been labeled as the villain.
Yeah.
And it's kind of disgusting, to be honest with you, because you have landlords that are really doing the right thing. Are there slumlords out there? Are there horrible landlords? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You got the worst of the worst out there. You got some pretty bad tenants out there too. You know?
Correct.
So from each side of the equation, you definitely have bad situations.
But it seems that if the less leverage is toward the owners. In other words, the perception is automatically, you touched on it a second ago, is that automatically the perception is they're wrong.
Yeah.
They're the villains.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's always been the case here in New York.
They have to fight it to show that, that they're credible.
And even then, they're never made whole. They're never made whole at the end. When you're watching ABC News, when you're watching CBS, when you're watching NBC, what's the popular story? Look at that nasty landlord.
I know.
They put a landlord with horns on his head. They love to go down to Brooklyn and go after that whole section of landlords and go after them. And some of them are bad, some of them are good. I tell you something, the majority are good people that are just trying to survive and do the right thing for themselves.
It's sad. I've been going to the sheriff's department in New York City. I've seen a lot of that, and I've seen landlords had to walk away. They had to abandon their buildings. Are they still doing that to a degree?
Well, it's going to continue.
They couldn't afford to maintain it, and then the tenants, and I have to say this because I've seen it, the ones that took advantage, took advantage of the landlord being a so-called villain. They took advantage of it. They wound up getting stuck because the landlord took off because there's no oil being delivered, right, and things like that. The lights go out, so maybe they deserve it, for taking advantage of the situation and milking the poor landlord.
You're absolutely right about that. And here's the other thing: a lot of them want to turn it into more public housing. I'm sure you've been into many complexes that are considered public housing.
Mostly.
What are the living conditions in them?
Well, here's the thing. What you just it's a good point. When they talk about more things that are going on in public housing, right? They blame the city of New York, and they even blame de Blasio, who I don't agree with. But in that case, somebody got to fess up and say, it's the tenants that are urinating in the elevators. It's the tenants that are going on the roof landing, and it's the tenants that are destroying the building. $90,000 a door because they have combination locks in the city housing, and they break it 2 or 3 times a week to fix. Nobody wants to talk about the villains who are, I hate to say this, the majority of the destruction in the city of New York and the housing authority are from the tenants themselves.
It happens a lot.
It happens quite often, yeah. And they don't. In my time, if we raided an apartment that they were dealing drugs out of, they'd throw them out. The city would get rid of them. They were drug dealers. Not today.
That's the way it should be.
Not today.
That's the way it really should be. Or if there's a tenant out there that's collecting Section 8 or SSI or any type of other government funding thing, and you see them driving a 600S Mercedes.
All the time. Very good.
How does that make sense?
You look at these, touch on something that we used to talk about. You go into the housing authority parking lot, you'll see a Mercedes, a BMW, and you might see a Porsche, right? And today, when Obama came in, he was added to by giving them food stamps, right?
How does that work?
They get welfare, and they got a Porsche parked in the housing authority park, and they complain, I want a new cabinet, I want a new refrigerator, and they get it, by the way, and they get it because, that's the way it is right now. So the city has a big nut. First of all, the housing authority never makes money. It's always they run in the red. There's no profit in the housing authority. I understand that you might know they have some. They want to sell some of the housing projects to to private ownership? I don't know if you've heard that. You
Well, they've attempted that in the past many
Oh.
times. There was a rejuvenation in the 80s
yeah,
in Harlem and many other areas, East
Yeah.
New York, where they were selling the properties for very low numbers, as low as a $1
Huh.
for the whole building. But we're talking about buildings
correct.
that
Oh,
were they're not for like the weak-hearted.
oh,
So the landlords will go in there, spend an enormous amount of money to
yeah.
renovate them, bring them up to what the standards are. Sometimes it got so bad they just had to give it back to the city because they couldn't handle it.
They can't make a profit.
And that has a lot to do with the restrictions that the city has implied and imposed on them. You're talking about a very difficult situation. If they were more lax on the eviction type of situations
Yeah.
and the rights that landlords have, I guarantee you that private landlords can take over every single housing complex out there that's public housing and bring it up to what it should be and bring it to its glory of when it was first built.
Well, it was exactly right. The purpose of it.
And go back to the
purpose of
original concept of we have affordable housing for the intent of giving people the opportunity to get their foot in the door and give them an opportunity to be able to get themselves started
Yeah.
and not stay here for the rest of their lives.
Correct.
Instead, the culture has made it where, oh, woe is me, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. That shouldn't be the way it was.
You see, that's another thing you touched on. Like I say, like a throwback. They have people living in public housing, generation. Women, I think, are four that live in the city housing projects now. Generation welfare, right? And try and catch them with the rent, too, right? And the
Yeah.
destruction. Plus, the grandparents or great grandparents who originally owned the apartments are long gone. The kids just take it over and they pay the rent when they want to. So who really owns that apartment? That's another thing that the city, private, like you said, private would be tough on that. Private would not take.
Well, it's not only that, they'll care.
Oh,
The
yes.
city
Yeah.
will do just the bare minimum of what's required,
Correct. Yeah.
but they won't individually care what the building necessarily looks like.
Right.
When you own something and you go and you shine those windows
Mm.
and you make sure the floors are spotless and gleaming, you, as a landlord, as an individual owner,
Right.
you take pride in that.
Yeah. Exactly. And the people that live there are supposed to also take pride in that.
They
But,
should.
Yeah. Because these all these they talk about rats, a lot of rats, and they're blaming the city. Nick, it's the tenants that are throwing garbage out the window, not the city of New York. They're the ones that are throwing garbage in the hallways. They're the ones that it's just mind-boggling. But you can't blame them because it's political.
Well, I blame the city for enabling them.
Exactly.
Enabling them and
Exactly.
allowing this to continue.
Yep.
And why does it happen? Because there's more votes on one side than the other.
You're right on
And
target.
it's just simple as that.
You're right on target. Only that way.
It's just simple as that.
It's always politics. Yes.
It all comes down to politics.
Yeah.
And the only way landlords will ever be able to fight that, and I don't know if they'll ever happen because most landlords want to do the right thing, is if they stop paying their property taxes all at once.
Yeah. Oh,
See what happens then.
yeah.
Because 44% of the income for New York City
Right.
comes in, or New York State actually comes in from property taxes.
Yes.
So let's turn off the valve and see what happens then. But it won't happen because every individual landlord is worried about it. And they're like, I want to do the right thing. I don't want to lose my building. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to lose, I don't want to get fined to death.
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't happen because they generally do the right thing. So we'll see what this is going to be a saga that's going to continue.
Wow, I'm going to talk about that for an hour. I'm going to open phones, and I'm going to get people to sort of what they think in regard to the presidential election.
Well, I didn't even get into half of it, to be quite honest with you. There's so much to get into. And I'll probably do another live stream. I'll probably continue next week on I don't know what we're ending off at because I don't want to take any more of your time.
I'm glad to have you talking about this stuff. By the way, you cannot be a new millennium because you work for a living.
Wow.
You're a business guy. Otherwise you'd be out there with Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So, but you're a responsible guy. But it has to do. I got to tell you this has to do, which I find has to do with, family, you know?
It's
Family structure.
how you're raised.
Yeah,
I generally actually like to work.
yeah,
I feel like I have a purpose.
correct.
I get up every day to go to work.
Yeah.
It's what do we need to do.
Mm.
On that note,
And that note,
Trevor is
just,
knocking me out,
yes,
and we're gonna easily
yeah,
groove
yes,
into
but
Lou.
yeah, before I go on, Trevor, you do my little promo first, all right?
You wanna go for it?
Yeah,
Okay,
then
okay.
I post so people know who I is.
Oh, okay.
So good night, everyone. We'll be again with you next week,
I can
just like every week on the Real Estate Plate, 6 to 7 p.m. Stay tuned for Lou Telano.
I can
It is time for Streetwise, the former chief of the New York City Sheriff's Department, former chief of the Seagate Police Department, retired New York City detective, Time Warner Public Access Media Award, Joe Franklin Super Excellence in Broadcasting Memory Lane Award, New York Veteran Police Association Streetwise production, host of Streetwise, Mr. Lou Telano.
Good evening and welcome back to Streetwise. You know, I'm glad I came out with Nick because I just got warmed up. He warmed me up. You know, it's like when an entertainer goes out there, he's got like a vac on before, so he warms up the audience and actually he gives a chance to the person to come on, which is me. So thank you, Nick, for having me on. And,
Did I warm you up or rile you up?
You got me going, which was good. And sometimes I'm gonna do a little different show tonight, folks, on advertising. I hope, because I did get a lot of response on advertising. The subject matter tonight, of course, is the Joe Biden, Donald Trump elections and where we go. But I want to give out some phone numbers, folks, if you want to call your thoughts, your opinion, your suggestions, whatever. Both 516-623-1240. Odie, I got it. No more drinks for me, I'm drinking the tea. 516-623-1240. That's our station, 1240 AM radio. Other phone number is also 516, like I said, 546-2146.